Hey everyone, it's Daria. Welcome back to my channel Full of Lit, and I recently realized that it's been quite some time since I last updated you guys on what I've been reading. The last few books that I've read, I've actually vlogged about, including Uzumaki and the entire After series. But today I thought I would do a quick recap of all the other books that I've read and loved recently. I picked up A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahira Mafi, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This book follows Shirin, who is a young Muslim Iranian-American teen. This book is set about a year after 9/11, so Shirin is dealing with a lot of Islamophobia and prejudice from her classmates and peers. And we see her navigate that and also watch her develop a love for breakdancing. And on top of all of that, she meets and starts to form a really strong connection with a boy named Ocean. I have read Tahira Mafi's Shatter Me trilogy, and I enjoyed it, but I have to say that this book definitely made me fall in love with her as an author. I can't speak to the Muslim representation in these books, but to read about an Iranian teen and see her mother call her certain terms of endearment and just sort of see the Iranian culture represented in their household was really meaningful to me. I also think Ocean was one of the sweetest, if not the sweetest, love interests I've ever read about in contemporary YA, and the fact that the author was speaking from her own lived experiences, I think just made the story that much more compelling. Next up, I picked up A Reaper at the Gates by Sabaa Tahir, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This one had a bit of a slow start for me. I don't know if it was because my mood suddenly changed. I was really into fantasy and then all of a sudden was completely turned off by the genre, but I powered through and I am so glad that I did and that I finished this book before the last one comes out. I have to say that the standout POV in this book has to be Helene. She just went so dark in this book. Getting to see her move from soldier who's just following the rules and doing what she thinks is right to almost outright villain was so interesting to me. I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'm not a huge fan of Elias and Laya and their romance, but them individually as characters, perfection. And I hate to admit this, but I think one of the reasons that I loved this book so much is because Elias and Laya were sort of kept apart for most of it, so I didn't have to deal with their romance and I could just enjoy them and their individual storylines. Also, that revelation at the end about you-know-who's true identity, wow. Just wow. Next, I took a page out of my friend Kat's book and I decided that I wanted to just emotionally wreck myself. So I picked up A Little Life. And you know what? Mission accomplished. If I still have the photographic evidence, I will put it up here on my screen, but I was a mess. But here's the thing, even though I obviously had extreme emotional reactions to this book, I really don't know if I liked it. I feel like there's this reputation surrounding this book. If you've read it and you've gotten through it, you sort of enter this exclusive club of people who have read A Little Life and cried about it. And I don't know if I want to be in that club. And if I am hereby rescinding my membership. Because I don't think this book and the reading experience of it should be seen as some kind of milestone or incredible thing to accomplish. There are many people who I think will benefit from never reading this book. It's not even that this book contains so much triggering material, or even that it went into extreme graphic detail. I'm gonna be honest, with the way that people talked about this book, I was expecting far worse. But this book was relentless. This author introduces you to these characters, she makes you care about them, she gets you invested in their dynamics, in their hopes and dreams, and then she straps you down and makes you watch while she decimates these characters. I don't know how to explain to you just how relentless this book was in its ability to hurt its characters and by extension hurt the reader. The writing is gorgeous, the characters are well realized. This author is extremely talented, but like, why? Like, why? I really would like to know why. If any of you out there have come to the decision that you never want to read this book, that is 110% valid. I do not ever see myself going back to it. To all those people who have read it multiple times over, how? Just like I had questions for the author, I have questions for you. How? Next, I read the middle grade book Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. This book follows a young girl named Judeh who lives in Syria, and at the start of the novel, she and her mother are sent to America to live with her uncle. This book is all about Judeh becoming acclimated to her new surroundings, trying to make friends with her cousin who continuously rejects her. We see her in her English language classes, getting to know all the other students, and we also invest in her newfound friendships with people at school. Everything, all the elements, all the puzzle pieces just fit together so well. There's nothing that could be done to improve this book in any way, besides maybe making it longer. It was beautifully written. Jude was a wonderful, insightful, curious, courageous protagonist. This book also did a really great job confronting the ways in which we here in the West look at the Middle East and think about the people who live there. This book also just makes me want to pick up way more middle grade. Like, if this is what I'm missing, then I am truly missing out on a lot. Next, I read Secret Crush Seduction by J.C. Lee. This story follows Adelaide Song. She is part of the very wealthy and well-known Song family, and she has always harbored very deep romantic feelings for her brother's best friend, Michael. They both get assigned to a project together, they start hanging out a lot, and of course, feelings and romance blossom. I really struggled to get through this book. Adelaide and Michael were definitely like sexy and fun together, but I could never fully invest myself in their relationship. I felt like their romance was kind of rushed, and I don't feel like enough time and attention was given to either of the characters' individual storylines and insecurities and struggles. Also, this book featured the most last-minute resolution I've seen in any romance novel ever. Like, I've read a lot of romance where the couple somehow magically figure things out pretty close to the end, and I'm always thinking, that's a little bit unrealistic. But this book, it literally happens in the last 5 pages. They just managed to overcome these supposedly insurmountable odds, and I just wasn't really buying it. Next, I picked up what was probably, actually, you know what, no, definitely my favorite thing that I've read in the last 2 months. And that was Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. This book got 5 stars, okay? There's no other option. I put off this book 1, because of the length, and 2, because I was afraid that it wouldn't live up to my expectations. So many people were raving about it, and I was like, could it be that good? And the answer is yes. It is that good. In fact, it's better. Let's just get this out of the way. I think all of us can agree that this book really had no plot. This book is 100% character driven. And that's fine by me, because Cassandra Clare has this magical ability to make you care so deeply about every single one of her characters. Every time she starts a new series and introduces us to a new cast of characters, I think it's not possible. She can't top the last one. There's no way I'm gonna love these ones even more. And I really need to stop making assumptions when it comes to Cassandra Clare, because she always manages to outsell. I cannot tell you a single character in this book that I do not love with my entire heart and soul, except for Grace and Charles. I have actually never hated 2 characters more in my entire life. But you know what? I am still counting that as points in favor of Cassandra Clare, because as much as she made me love the other characters, she also made me hate those 2 with a passion I have truly never experienced before. And in case anyone was confused, the acceptable ships are as follows: Cordelia and James, Alistair and Thomas, Lucy and Jesse, Anna and Ariadne, Matthew and Self-Love and Acceptance. And finally, Grace and Charles and a carriage that falls off the side of a cliff. The next book that I read was an autobiography written by Mary Turner Thompson called The Bigamist. We're introduced to Mary at the start of this novel, and she is a single mother. She gets onto a dating website and begins to talk to and then meets up with a guy named Will. They hit it off, they have a very fast-paced relationship, and they get married pretty quickly. And then Will just disappears for a really long stretch of time with no ability to contact him. And then when Mary finally does manage to get a hold of him, he tells her that he is part of the CIA. And this is just the beginning of what turns into years of manipulation, abuse, lies, and even thievery. Based on the title of this book, I think you can probably guess the truth of who Will was. This book was very well written. It basically read like a true crime novel or a thriller. I've heard some people say that this book get very repetitive, but I actually liked that Mary would continuously go into details about all the lies that Will would tell and the way that he would manipulate her into believing him. The story is repetitive because she was being repeatedly lied to and abused. I think the greatest thing this book did was sort of ask the reader to engage in some pretty radical empathy and understanding. There were so many times that I, and I'm sure anyone who's read this book, thought, come on, you can't believe him. Why didn't you get out? How could you not see it? And I think this book does a really great job sort of letting us know that anyone can be a victim of this kind of manipulation and abuse. Next up, I read The Roommate by Rosie Danan. This book follows Clara, who comes from a very wealthy socialite family on the East Coast. She decides to pack up her whole life and move to the other side of the country in order to hopefully win over the guy that she has had a crush on since she was young. She planned on staying with this guy for an extended amount of time, but then he tells her that he's actually going on tour with his band and that she'll be living with a guy named Josh. And Clara soon finds out that Josh is a very famous porn star. And that setup right there sold me, and I'm sure so many other people, on this book. It is very rare for a sex worker to be the main character in a novel, especially to be the love interest, and to not be demonized for it. Eventually, Josh and Clara team up and they create a website that is very much centered on women and women's pleasure. It teaches you different techniques and just kind of encourages you to be intimate with your partner in the most healthy way possible. This book was just so sex positive, and the actual sex scenes between Clara and Josh were very hot, very sexy. I very much approved. They had great banter and great chemistry that popped off the page. I can't wait to read more in this series. The next book is centered on Josh's ex. She's also a porn star herself, and I cannot wait for that book. I will definitely be requesting it in advance. Next, I read Elizabeth Acevedo's Clap When You Land, and this woman has officially become one of my favorite authors of all time. She cannot write a bad book. Like, it is not in her DNA to be able to write a bad book. She can't do it. This book follows two young women who are around the same age. There's Camino, who has lived and grown up in the Dominican Republic. She lives with her aunt, and she has always dreamed of coming to the States to study medicine. And then we have Yahaira, who lives in New York City. She's a chess champion and balances her dedication to the game while also trying to hang out and spend as much time as she can with her girlfriend. And both their lives are deeply affected when they find out that their fathers died in a tragic plane accident. And then things get even more complicated when they find out that they actually share a father. Elizabeth Acevedo understands how to write a character because she understands people. She understands that all of us are deeply and realistically complex, that we have insecurities and fears that stop us from going after what we want and cause us to lash out sometimes and even hurt the people that we love. She knows how to make you invest in characters and understand and empathize with them even when you disagree with what they're doing. And I've said this with every single Elizabeth Acevedo book that I have talked about and recommended on my channel. You need to listen to this book on audio. Elizabeth Acevedo lends her voice as one of the two main girls, and another equally strong narrator is the other voice. The author's narration just elevates her stories to a whole nother level. And finally, the most recent book that I read and finished was Midnight Sun by Stephenie Meyer, and I gave this like a 3.5, 4 stars. I kind of go back and forth with the rating, honestly. Stephenie Meyer truly just handed me the exact amount of nostalgia that I needed at the exact right time. Like, did we learn anything new? No, not really. Were the best parts of this book any moment that featured the other members of the Cullen family? 100% yes. They were the highlights of this book. Did this book make my life slightly more bearable for the week and a half that I was reading it? Also, yes. Also, I think it's important that I mention here that the actual Quileute tribe is trying to move to higher ground and just sort of preserve their community and their tradition. I will leave the donation link and just general info link in the description below. So that's it for me today, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know if you've read any of these books, and if you have, what you thought of them, or just let me know what you've been reading recently. As always, you can find my social media links in the description below, so go ahead and check those out if you would like, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.